Hey everyone, this is Chris Miller and you're listening to the EduMind Podcast. If you're an architect, project manager, or a nurse, or maybe you're just curious about these career paths, then our podcast is one that you're not going to want to miss. Each week, we'll be talking to subject matter experts, course instructors, and other special guests to bring you the latest and greatest in architecture, project management, and nursing, and a whole lot more. Now, let's dive in.
I am a project manager, certified PMP and PMI-ACP. I did work in the fintech industry for quite a few years, about 5 years, and I have just within the last year decided to go freelance. So now I'm a freelance project manager. So kind of doing that independent career, taking control of my own trajectory kind of thing. So that's been going really well. I'm, like you said, I'm based in Denver, but I also have a converted van. So I like to travel around in my van sometimes. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Sounds great. You know, it's funny is I was reading through the questions for today and I saw the converted van. I'm like, well, I'm going to try to wait till the end. But now that you brought it up, I'm like, man, I don't know if I can sit here and get through everything else without asking about the converted van.
So, yeah, I won't dwell too much on it, but yeah.
So, all right, well, I'm going to try to get through some of these and then we'll come back to that converted van and kind of let you tell the story about the converted van and maybe where you've gone in the van. But let's talk PMP to get started. So I guess our main topic today is, you know, like you said, you're taking your own path, right? You're going to write your own story. You go on the your own path. So a lot of people are probably thinking, you know, it's a good way to go. And some people probably contemplated whether or not they should get their PMP. And so now let's kind of talk about how the PMP certification can kind of help you take control of your own career. So let's ask you this. So how has obtaining the PMP, the PMI-ACP helped you take control of your career? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be different for everyone, right? And there's no denying that the PMP is definitely correlated with higher pay in general. It gives you really notable recognition in the industry. For me personally, it's definitely allowed me to have a more independent career. Like I mentioned earlier, it's allowed me to work on projects that I actually want to work on, which is really exciting. Projects that are meaningful to me in my career. And it's really allowed me to have that success as a freelancer, excuse me. So the PMP is not, I would say it's definitely not an automatic ticket to successfully transitioning. Like you definitely need to put in the work behind it. You need to be able to prove that you are competent beyond that. But it definitely provides you with that much needed edge that you need to compete in the market. So I know that for me personally, being certified as a PMP has put me at the front running for a lot of initial meetings with clients. And a lot of, just kind of that initial rapport building is a little bit more disappeared when you already have that PMP, so you don't need to do that as much. So, and obviously it's always been a dream of mine to be able to work while traveling as well. So I don't think I would have been able to do that as successfully without obtaining the PMP. So.
Well, no, it makes sense. And thanks for that background. You know, I agree with you. Let's say I'm wanting to go on my own way, right? I want to be my own boss and I'm going to go in business for myself. And so, you know, a lot of times when you're new and, you know, you're trying to get prospective clients, sometimes they question maybe, you know, do you have the knowledge? Do you have the skills? But at least if you walk in with the PMP certification, it kind of at least gets that out of the way, right? People are no longer going to doubt your knowledge or your ability as a project manager because you've been tested, right? True and tested. You have the certification, so that at least they know that, hey, you're a gold standard for project management. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And then, you know, a lot of times people wonder, well, you know, being a project manager, it entails so many different aspects, right? So many different things. You got to be a great communicator. You got to be a great leader. So what are some of the things or skills that you've learned or you will learn as a PMP?
Okay, yeah. So I would say that like you said, communication is definitely very important. A lot of people, I think, when they think about project managers, they think about process. So the project manager follows a certain process, and we do many, you know, linear steps to get to where we need to be and make sure everybody's on track. But really, being a great communicator is the vast majority of your job as a project manager. So, so when you go through the process of becoming a PMP, you learn a lot about having good interpersonal relationship skills. just good communication skills in general, and you really get some tangible, because those are kind of considered soft skills, right? So
Right.
so you get a lot of tangible tools and actions that you can actually use to become a better communicator with people who maybe your peers, maybe levels above you, all kinds of things like that. So and then speaking of being able to influence or communicate with people above you, leadership is also very, very important, right? So being a project manager is all about being a servant leader. So you serve the project team. You want to empower the team to be able to do their best work. And you're often in a situation, or at least I was often in a situation where I was expected to kind of lead and guide the direction of a project for people who may have been miles above my pay grade, or at least on the same level as me, right? So I've never had that formal power of, having people under me, but that's kind of what being a project manager is all about. You have that kind of informal power, you have that influential power, and you need to know how to use it the right way. So so you really have to learn how to be a confident leader without actually having those formal team managerial responsibilities. So you definitely get a lot of that with the PMP as well. And then of course you do learn about process. Process is also it's the kind of the yin and yang. You have the soft skills and you have the hard skills as well. So you definitely learn about the process. So you learn how to manage the entire project lifecycle end to end, which, I mean, you have to have some project management experience before you take the PMP, of course. But when you actually go in and learn about how that process is managed end to end, it puts a lot of it in context, right? So so there were a lot of activities that I had been used to doing or had done on a daily basis as a project manager before I took the PMP training, but once I went through the process of becoming a PMP, you really realize, oh, this is how it all kind of ties in together. So
no, that makes sense. It's a great backdrop story. I appreciate you sharing that information with the audience here. So one other question for you. So will certification enhance your current knowledge? And if so, how?
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, like I said, it definitely puts context in perspective for, what it means to actually manage a project from initiating all the way to closing. So you definitely learn a lot of the why behind the activities that you do as a project manager. And you also learn, you get a lot of tools in your tool belt to learn how to tailor project management. That's something that's new with the new exam as of 2021. I'm forgetting what year it is. As of 2021, you now, as a certified PMP, you learn about more than just traditional project management. You learn about agile methodologies. You learn you learn about agile methodologies. You learn about how to maybe combine some of those agile methodologies with traditional project management. So that definitely kind of gives you the background knowledge you need to be able to make the decisions that you need to make about your own projects.
That makes sense. So, we kind of talk about, Agile, and then you have the more traditional Waterfall, right? Project management style or technique, which PMP was pretty much, foundation was Waterfall, right? And then Agile slowly started to come into the picture more so with the exam changes in 2021. So a lot of, people were like, well, you get a project, you work it through A through Z, and then after the project's done, if there needs any changes, you deal with it maybe for a next version. But Agile allows you to kind of pivot, turn left, right more quickly. So they introduced the Agile into the PMP, like I said, when it was 2021. So do you see a lot of similarities between the two, I guess, project management methodologies, Agile and Waterfall?
I do, yeah. There actually is. There's more similar with Agile and traditional project management than you would maybe think that there would be. I think there's a misconception that Agile project management means that you don't document anything and you just you just do things ad hoc, or you do things as they're needed. And while there's some truth in the doing things as they're needed, Agile projects actually might at some points plan even more than traditional projects do, because Agile projects fit a lot with more complex work. So you might find yourself in a situation where you're planning every couple of weeks instead of planning the entire project at the beginning, and you still need to have that documentation to show, what you plan to deliver next, and you're still reflecting on your lessons learned. It's maybe just called by a different name, or you're doing it more frequently. So that's the main comparison that I would see, is that a lot of the activities are similar, but you're doing them maybe in smaller bites, or doing them a little bit more often, with kind of a more streamlined approach. Okay, what are we tackling for the next 2 weeks, kind of thing. So
that makes sense. With Agile, the sprints are involved, right? So there's shorter runs. I saw something interesting when I was reading through the podcast, and I was kind of, learn a little bit about you before we met today. Is you're a PMP, and then you're also a PMI-ACP. So what made? I mean, I've met a lot of just PMPs, or I've met someone that's the ACP. I don't meet many that are both. What made you go after both certifications, and is there a benefit for having both?
Yeah, so I think, again, my situation is a little bit unique, so I'll speak to it a little bit. I got the PMI-ACP first before I got the PMP, and I got the PMI-ACP before it was announced that the PMP was changing its test to be geared more towards Agile. So before 2021, it was very strictly traditional project management that you would be tested on for the PMP. So it was kind of interesting, because when I took the PMI-ACP and I got my Agile certification, about a year and a half later, I decided to get my PMP. And actually, I noticed a lot of similarities to the test when I was taking the PMP and the PMI-ACP. I think now that the PMP is kind of all-encompassing and reflects Agile methodologies as well as traditional a bit more, I would say that the PMI-ACP may be a little less relevant than it was a couple of years ago, because PMI is really making that effort to give a comprehensive view of everything now. But it made sense for me before PMP or before PMI had changed the test for me to do that.
No, that makes complete sense, because you're right. You're going from ACP and then taking your PMP. Now, I mean, people get the PMP and they have access, or not, they have, I guess, knowledge of Agile in it in order to get through this new exam. So people talk about some of the benefits of a PMP certification is salary increase, but it's also respect amongst peers. So did you notice any, I guess, difference in maybe how clients or your fellow peers maybe treated you prior to and then after getting certified?
Not a huge difference for me, because I had that relationship built with my team that I was currently working for when I got sponsored to take the PMP by the employer that I was working for. Once I left and decided to pursue a freelance career, I definitely noticed that there's a big difference in kind of establishing that initial relationship.
Right.
You have to spend a lot of time, regardless, building up rapport with your clients, and that's just kind of a given. But with the PMP, or with having the PMP, I feel as though there's definitely that kind of initial layer of trust that's already built. Oh, we know that you're a PMP, so we know that you've gone through this before. So even though, I still have to definitely make an effort to show that I can apply that knowledge practically, it kind of eliminates that first nervousness of, oh, I don't really know if this person is actually experienced, or if they know what they're talking about. So it definitely helped me with that.
That makes sense. I got a question for you. So I talk to a lot of people, because one of the things we do is we do exam prep for the PMP. And so, as you're talking to people, you may come across someone that's been a project manager for 25 years, right? Now they're just coming back to get their PMP certification. And one of the biggest, I guess, obstacles that they have is kind of taking their shoes off and putting on PMI shoes. And, I try to explain this to people like, hey, I know this is maybe how you were doing projects successfully for 25 years, but if you want to get through the exam, you're going to have to take a different approach. So, I mean, did you see that, or do you buy into that as well, that sometimes the most difficult thing is getting out of your own way, not trying to approach the questions or the exam how you think or how you would actually manage a project?
Yeah, no, I'm smiling, because that's something that I definitely experienced, and I think I did a PMP boot camp as well. So I was with a group of people who were also experiencing the same thing, or would have a lot of questions about. Well, at my company we do it this way, or we've always done it this way. So yes, definitely experienced that for sure. I think there's a certain level of, if you're wanting to prepare for the PMP, you have to understand that PMI is giving you what a project would be managed like in an ideal scenario. Like if everything was run absolutely perfectly and everybody has individually defined job responsibilities, very clearly defined team roles, unless of course there's an exception in the question, which sometimes there is, but there might be, you know, at your certain company, you might have a company that says that they're agile, but they don't actually really do many agile things. You might have a company that says that they do project management like to the standards of the PMBOK, but they don't actually at all, or they have mixed job responsibilities. Your project manager might also be a business analyst, which are supposed to be completely separate roles. But I've run into that before as well, where somebody calls themselves a project manager, but really they're more of a business analyst in the sense of what PMI would define them as. So yeah, kind of shedding down those initial biases that you have and being able to understand how a project would be run in an ideal world is kind of an essential for being able to answer the questions correctly.
No, I agree. You know, sometimes it's hard, right? It's hard for you to not forget, but put aside, you know, X number of years of experience. You know, a few years, it was about, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, I was teaching a PMP class, and I had an older gentleman in the class, and he had his PMP, but it lapsed. So he had to retake the exam. And so he's sitting in the class. He doesn't want to listen to anything, right? He's like, I already know it, And so he's kind of, you know, starting to irritate the others in there that are learning, right? And so every time I'd be like, you know, I said, I know this is how you do it, but this is what you need to know, right? So for those 4 days, it was a constant back and forth, right? So on that Friday, I said, hey, you know, wish you luck, you know, on your exam. So about 2 weeks later, he calls me and he goes, hey, I didn't pass the exam. Can I take a class with you? And so I was like, yeah, come on back. So that whole 4-day boot camp, he was just as, you know, quiet as can be. He absorbed everything he could, and then he went ahead and took it and he passed it. But it's difficult to, you know, forget, I guess, your practices and your ways, at least to kind of, I don't know if it's an ego thing or if it's just, you know, a mindset.
Well, I mean, you say 20 people who have been experienced project managers for 25 years have issues. I had only been a project manager for just over 3 years when I decided to get my PMP. I decided to do it as soon as I was eligible. And even I had trouble letting go of, you know, some of the practices that I'd learned or gotten in the habit of doing because of the organization that I was in. So I can only imagine how difficult it would be for somebody who's been a PM for that long to let go of some of those things. And it's interesting that you say that his lapsed and he had it for 6 or 7 years because PMI is always changing the exam as well. So so even things that you learned 6 years ago are probably outdated by now.
I agree. And also true, though, is like, you know, being a project manager isn't just what you do. I mean, it's not like you have to be a formal project manager, right? You could be overseeing building a treehouse for your kids, right? And you can be managing a project. So it'd be an informal project. So I was telling him, I was like, well, you didn't manage your project very well. You had a PMP. The task was to make sure you took your PDOs to get it. So I'm like, hence why you're here. But also, you know, one thing about PMPs is that not only do we see you as like a gold standard for project manager, you have the knowledge and the skills to perform the task of a project manager, but also along with the PMP comes the responsibility to also stay current, right, with the trends in project management. And have you found that since you have that certification, do you find that maybe you pay more attention to the trends than you would if you didn't have a PMP?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially because I've made it my own independent career to do that, it's kind of my responsibility to know what the trends are. And because we also do a recurring education and training and things like that to make sure that we stay up to date. I definitely feel as though I pay attention a bit more to what the standards should be. I'm always, now that I'm freelancing and I have multiple clients that I'm doing projects for at a time, I'm always kind of comparing what they're doing with what the standard should be. So I've always kind of got that in my head.
That's funny. I got a question. So, you know, as a project manager, you could oversee a small project, a large project. So over your years, what would you say has been your most challenging project that you worked on?
I would say I'm caught between two. One that I've done that was, it was actually a pretty small company, but didn't have any standards in place at all. So it was very difficult to get the team on the same page. to align on what the vision of the project was, to align on what the budget was going to be and how we were going to do change management. And all of that was just very, very difficult. So from just being able to directly manage a project, that one always stands out in my mind as one that was very frustrating. There's another one that I could say because it was so large. That's kind of the opposite. But working on a very large company acquisition that was multiple billions of dollars, and trying to organize many, many different departments on, what their 3-year plan was, and try to get organized around that. I mean, that was an absolute monster. So that one was also challenging. So it's interesting. I kind of have two in my head, but both for very different reasons. And one was small, and I feel like it should have been very straightforward, but it just wasn't, because there was nothing in place to go off of. And then the other one, was a very well-run, very well-established company, but there was just so much going on that it was difficult to keep track of. And we had over 100 project managers on that effort total, and then like more project managers to manage those project managers. So,
holy cow!
Yeah, so yeah, very, very different projects, but those would be my two.
Wow. It's interesting. Like if the project being large, a lot of moving pieces, you would expect that to be a challenging one. And as opposed to the one, like you said, a smaller one, you would have thought, oh yeah, this should be a fairly easy one to manage. But when there's no organization or there's just chaos, it definitely makes things a lot more difficult. So now that you've kind of talked about your most challenging projects, what about your most rewarding project?
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because I would say the most rewarding one would probably be that same one where we did the merger and acquisition that was very large, and that when we actually were able to complete the acquisition of the company, and we had the legal merger completed, that was our first major milestone. Super rewarding. And I was part of the effort that kind of oversaw all of the other work streams and rolled up executive reporting. So I kind of got to see all of that happen in real time. We were on a call at 3 a.m, making sure that all of the software integrations worked fine, and the New York Times was publishing the news release on time, and so it was super exciting to be part of that, even though it was really challenging. So. Yeah.
Well, that's what is so great, right? You did all that hard work, you overcame a lot of obstacles and challenges, and it was completed. And so now, you're able to enjoy and feel the reward of that. That's fantastic. We've had a lot of fun talking PMP, but there's two things that have just been staring at me off this paper. So I got to ask you. One is we got to get to your van. We got to get to the converted van, and what's it like having a converted van? Where have you gone with the van?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I bought the van when I decided to freelance around the same time, and I didn't work for about a month or so when I first got it. When I quit, I kind of took my own little personal sabbatical, traveled around in the van, and then decided to start freelancing after that. And it was great. So I was planning on doing a whole conversion myself, which would be a nightmare, and I won't even get into to all of the things you would have to do to make that work. You have to do insulation, you have to wire your own electrics and do all of that. But luckily I found somebody who was selling their own van for a really, really good price. And so I only had to do a few minor modifications, but yeah, so it's got solar panels on it, and it's all kitted out with everything that you need for essential living.
Wow.
I've taken up to month-long trips in it before. So and I have done that since I started freelancing. So I'm actually able to, because of I've got a portable monitor set up that I don't use all the time. I'm at home right now, so I don't use it all the time. But portable monitor and a portable router, so I actually work from the van at points. And yeah, so I've gone all over the West Coast. I've done trips from Northern California to Southern California. I've done ski trips up to Montana as well, and done that for a while. So I'm kind of like a ski bum, except I actually have a job and gainful employment. So best of both worlds.
That is pretty cool. So where's your favorite place that you've gone?
I would say that's really hard to pick, but I would say that either Big Sky, Montana, where I skied for a while, or I was in Northern California in the Redwoods area for beautiful. A while, where, that was absolutely beautiful, and on the coast as well. So got to be near the ocean, and that was great. So
you're like a traveling PMP.
So I should get that embedded on my van, or spray painted on my van, the traveling PMP.
So where's your next stop?
So I'm planning on doing another road trip through. I've kind of been holding off for the winter, but once the summer kicks around again, I want to do more traveling in my home state, Colorado. So so I'm planning on doing a few camping trips. I have not taken my mom in the van yet. She wants to go on a little trip, so I think we're going to have to do that at some point. But yes, stay in put for now. So.
Well, that's exciting. We'll have to do a podcast while you're on the road.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we'll just follow the PMP across Colorado, see where your next stop is. And then the second thing that popped out at me is apparently you like to bake.
I do, yeah. When I'm not in the van, but I mean, when I'm in the van, it's mostly break out the Toll House cookie dough and and then see how that goes. But yeah, I do definitely like to bake. So. I like to make cookies. I like to I make cakes quite often. I would like to get better at cake decorating, but I'm not quite there yet. I've tried a few. You see those online forums about people who decorate cakes for fun, or the cake wars or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, I'm definitely not that good, but I would like to do a little bit more with those kinds of things. So
it's pretty neat. Yeah. So traveling and baking PMP, you don't find those often.
One of a kind, I guess.
Well, Madi, I appreciate you coming out today. I'd love to have you back. I loved it. Like when you start your travels again, we'd love to keep up with you on that and talk to you on your journey throughout Colorado or wherever you may end up being. But for everyone else that tuned in today, appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week. Madi, thank you so much for joining and chatting with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome.